When I was doing R&D, I'd be in the kitchen for 6 to 12 hours a day. And my wife would make fun of me that I was running a cooking show that nobody was watching because I'd be in there just narrating everything I was doing. But I was transcribing all of it through this intelligent little recording device. And then I wrote a really basic GPT for it to format my recipes. I can't remember any other technological innovation in our lifetime that taught you how to use it itself. I think that is an underappreciated aspect that AI will tell you exactly how to use it effectively.
Look, today I am excited to have Tim Martin on the Restaurant AI podcast. Look, we all have that person that we look to for inspiration. Tim is that man for me. When I ran my restaurants, I lived within my four walls. I did not stay up to date on technology. I wasn't following the latest trends. And as I watched Tim go through the launch of BoxBox, I can't help but think, will AI be different? Is AI accessible enough that the everyday independent operator is going to be able to leverage it for their operation? Or is this just another thing where the big guys get even bigger? Tim helps answer that question. He is an early adopter of AI. I think he'd tell you his first employee was AI, and it's really permeated through his entire operation. One of my favorite people and a fascinating conversation. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Tim Martin.
Every day, restaurant operators face the same impossible question. How much should we prep today? Day after day, it's the same cycle. Guessing, scrambling, and hoping you got it right. ClearCogs changes everything. Our AI analyzes your sales data, weather, events, and trends to tell you exactly what to prep, order, and staff before you need it. 53% reduction in bread waste. The projections are right on the money. We added 2% to our bottom line literally overnight. It's empowered us to scale confidently. Every morning, you get a daily prep sheet. That's it. No guesswork, no waste, just confident, data-driven decisions that transform your entire operation. Stop reacting to yesterday. Start commanding tomorrow. ClearCogs, making every day go right before it even starts. Learn more at clearcogs.com.
Tim, excited to have you on.
So stoked to be here.
Okay, so I think I've brought you up at least 2 or 3 times. I get the privilege to talk to these, giant organizations about their AI strategies and how they think about architecture. And it's all very esoteric. And I keep bringing you up because you are the single unit operator who just got started. And I got a call from you, I think it was maybe 48 hours before you opened. And you're asking me, which large language model do I ask this question to? Because I'm trying to vibe code a back of house system. And I'm like, man, the person that's on the cutting edge is not this massive organization. It's Tim Martin, whose doors open in 48 hours. So Tim, first off, excited to have you on and excited to talk about AI for the single unit operator. So give me the rundown. You just started your restaurant. Why in the hell are you giving me a call and asking about, vibe coding technology into your restaurant?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I'm glad to be here. I love the podcast. I get a lot of inspiration and insights from your conversations and from your guests. And
I very much appreciate that. Hopefully there's some good guidance in there.
I think so. And I think it, it helps us kind of figure out where we are in all this. Cause we're brand new. We're actually not even fully open yet. We're in kind of an extended soft launch phase, advanced orders only, while we still, market fit our concept. We're getting a bunch of feedback. We're about to bring a team on, and the AI story, the reason I was calling you, probably it all starts with, I've been in the industry about 20 years. And I have, for 18 of those years, I was a really big Avero user. I think what those guys, Bill,
they killed it. They killed it 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, with Damien, Bill, and what Doug has stewarded into kind of the next era, like I just have of the generation where I grew up, with spreadsheets and Avero were just part of restaurant operations. And I came out of the kitchen. I did get my master's from Cornell, and they're obviously big fans of that there. And I went into consulting and development and enterprise leadership. And I was always trying to understand what was happening in the restaurant better. And I also always wanted to have my own concept. That was always my goal, was to build a reasonable multi-unit regional chain. Like that's been my aspiration. I probably have bigger aspirations, but that's what I've wanted. And, when ChatGPT came out, it was a light switch for me because I came from this world of I always had analysts. We were always working with enterprise software, enterprise hardware, analytics tools. And all of a sudden, the ability to build the things that I'd always dreamed of seemed approachable.
I think that there's so many people that talk about removing that third wall. And now I can kind of do things, but very few that actually materially do it and bring it into their operation, something you seem to have done. What was that journey like?
It's ongoing, Matt, right? We're in early stages here. I think the planning of it and the execution of it was exhilarating and thrilling, scary. It has been like any founder will tell you, it's an emotional roller coaster. I think I underestimated the impact of the emotional connection here. I mean, I remember our first week, like I was in tears like every day, not because even I was like so overwhelmed or stressed, like just my emotions were so high. Something went well. Like I'm not a big crier, and it just was like it was a while. It was like when I had my kids, but I think it has been a story right now for us. Like we're taking it slow and steady. We are building a foundation. We are fine tuning a brand new concept. And at the heart of it is this idea of being able to put into practice, 20 years of the things people said no to, or I wish I could do, or things that felt out of reach. And for me, that started with, a headless architecture in our tech stack.
Take me through the tech stack. How did it start? Yeah. What is a headless architecture?
What it means is that we didn't opt to go with one of the traditional POS players out there. We felt pretty strongly that we wanted a digital brand. A big part of our guest experience is built and designed around kiosks. We wanted to do kiosks really differently. So when we looked at our tech stack, we said, well, we need online ordering. We need menu item management. We need payment. We need some way to have a kiosk. We also needed a ton of customization on our items because our items are almost more format based, and then the menu items come in there. So our actual menu is all modifiers. So we kind of had this whole, I have like this 4-page narrative of what I wanted the experience to be, and I shopped it around and was told I was crazy. That's not how it works. That's not the right way. But Olo came through and took a look at it and was like, I think we can do all of these things. And so he said, what can we do with you? We had a great conversation and we built a great partnership with them. And so they're doing our online ordering. They do our payments for us. We use their Engage product for our marketing, text and email based, and guest insights. And then they intersect with Byte, who's doing our kiosks. So our in-store experience is through Byte kiosks. And we've set those up so that we're actually about to reiterate them to launch this. There's actually going to be kind of a quiz feature that has a guest experience component to it. Why are you in? Who are you buying for? What do you like? And it's going to help kind of serve a recommendation until we can automate that.
If I don't have a POS, how am I as a customer placing an order with you?
So you place your orders through our online store, which is on Olo Serve, or through the kiosk.
All right. So does that mean I need to place it in advance with you, or I have to place it on the kiosk? There's no, I walk up and say, hey, Tim, I've never been to BoxBox before. How do I do this?
So there's no that. Right now, we are advanced order online only. The kiosks haven't gone live. But the way we built our line is the kiosks have the team right behind them. And we've actually kind of hacked together a real-time KDS using some USB-Cs and a bunch of mini computers. And so our team is seeing what you're ordering as you're ordering it, and they're actually right in front of you. And so the conversational aspects there, the service aspects there, the eye contacts there. This isn't a Wizard of Oz situation where you're ordering on a kiosk and then food comes out through a window in the back. You're directly interacting with our team. You're just navigating the process yourself on the kiosk, and they can see where you are. So if you get stuck, they can say, hey, it's actually that button down in the left, or you didn't press this, or whatever the issue is. And then we have a little business card. And if there's an issue, you text a number and we deal with refunds and all of those issues offline. So our team doesn't have to do any tendering. Ordering is 100% on the guest, which I think means it's basically 100% accurate, no miskeys. Guest service recovery is taken care of through a dedicated channel, so we can actually give that the time and space it needs, and it's removed from the pressures of service. And we're able to still provide a really high level of service and engagement while freeing our team from anything related to the POS itself.
Okay, so I'm familiar with the almost the Walmart greeter style kiosk service. I have a person there that's walking you through everything. You guys seem to have a different flavor. You're gonna somehow mirror that on a KDS screen so that you kind of are real time watching them order. Like, is that a homegrown solution? Is that off the shelf? How's that work?
It is quite homegrown right now. And our partners over at Byte and our partners at Elo helped us kind of figure it out. But I think it was somewhere where we felt like we could add some service and also add some efficiency by letting that whole order flow through the construction when it's in store be visible to our team. And then, of course, our team is worried about people being indecisive and changing their mind, or I do this whole thing and then you throw it out. And I think, that's where we really hope to make sure that we're instilling a strong sense of hospitality and service through an entirely kiosk-based concept. And that's going to take some time.
You're not a programmer. You're hacking all this together. How'd you manage to hack it together and make it work? Is this where the vibe coding comes in? Is this where where does that all kind of intersect?
This particular part's really a hardware-based solution.
Okay.
And we have an awesome low voltage team who helped us with our build out. Everything in our restaurant's hardwired in. We've got conduit everywhere. And we can do and we have smart switches all over the place. And we can do some pretty elegant and fun, if you're into that kind of stuff, IP mapping and moving stuff around. So that one's actually really a hardware-based solution. So we're almost an entirely modifier-driven menu, because I want you to pick your format and then you get to populate it. So our concept's a little bit inspired by bento boxes, and we have these large format boxes. You get to choose from our dozen rotating seasonal salads. They're picnic style salads. Think Junior League salads is always a reference. But we do chicken salad, pasta salad, veggie salad. The food that I think of as great times with your community. Tailgates, church picnics, Thanksgiving, like times where people are making those big, delicious salads and you're building a plate of them. We wanted that experience in kind of a fast casual concept. And so you got to pick your format, and then you're presented with 12 to 16, depending on the time of year, different salad choices to fill them out. So inherently, those were all modifiers. And that was a big friction point with a lot of the vendors. So back to Headless, Olo said, well, you can run an all modifier menu on us. And you can access it through our webhooks and our API. We don't have any canned reporting on it. And so we looked at that and we decided that.
By the way, this is where I ran into my issue. When we first started ClearCogs, it was like, I remember I got API access and I'm like, okay, I don't know what an API is. This is where I need to call a programmer and say, can you help me with an API? So great, you've got an API, but how in the hell do you use it? What do you do with it?
Yeah, so this is where the LLMs came in, and what led to me calling you, 48 hours before opening, It took us a couple months to assess and for me to understand the data tables. Olo provided a ton of documentation. I read all of it, didn't understand a lot of it. I definitely leveraged the LLMs to help me understand and translate it, learning
Do
prompts.
you remember what you did? Do you just drop all the documentation in and ask it like, hey, if I wanted to get this data point, how do I do it?
I moved, I started at about 50,000 feet. And I think I learned early on with the prompts to have it write prompts for itself was actually more efficient. So I learned to say, write me a prompt for somebody who has a lot of operations experience, kind of gave him my resume and said, and is going to use this software and this platform and wants to build this result. Like help, write a prompt to create something to explain that to somebody. And I got a lot better at really coaching the LLMs to be like, and by the way, give it to me in like 10 bullet points at a time and give me space for questions until I get through this. And so we'd have these long conversations, and I learned enough about API and webhook environment, and we launched into Google Cloud, and that's where the vibe coding began. And so, leveraging
by the way,
taught us
is
through.
This ChatGPT? Is this what large language model did you start with?
Our first foray into it was actually our recipe development using Claude with a P AI, which runs on a couple different models. One of them is a lot of their choices are Anthropic based. So when we were doing concept and recipe development, to back it up a little bit, I recorded everything. And so when I was doing R&D, I'd be in the kitchen for 6 to 12 hours a day. And my wife would make fun of me that I was running a cooking show that nobody was watching, because I'd be in there just narrating everything I was doing, weighing everything out. I was just talking to myself for like months, but I was transcribing all of it through this intelligent, they're designed for meetings, but through this intelligent little recording device.
That's really smart, by the way. It makes total sense.
And then I wrote a really basic GPT for it to format my recipes. And so I took out the transcribing and the worst part of recipe development, which is writing everything down. And I taught it what OPSI needed for uploads, use their documentation. So that was kind of like the beginning of this. So we just had this, like the whole R&D process has been recorded. It all lives on a Google Drive. And then it got us our first, like the recipes were 80%, but it gave us a really good head start to start to tweak them in there. And so from that, then I took all of those and fed all of those transcripts to ChatGPT, because I'd been talking a lot about our concept and our brand, and prompted it to start to create kind of like a master set of instructions about the concept, about the brand. We added in who our key influences are, what we wanted the experience to be. So we kind of started to teach it in a project. So this is a ChatGPT project, what the brand was. And then we continue to refine these like instructional TXT documents that live in our Google Drive and into ChatGPT. So we'd been doing that for about 4 months when we got to the place where we actually had the dashboard to build. So ChatGPT had a project in it that knew our culinary approach and how we were like building our menu. I'd created a new project, all those POS things that I'd written, these like brainstorms, which is I started writing those, and then I also recorded and add those in. Took those, and so it kind of knew what our culinary approach was, it knew how we wanted our POS structured, and then it learned about the Olo webhooks and APIs. They have exceptional documentation about those. And then I asked it to basically design a course for me on how to do this. And so it drove us, since we were already in Google, the most cost-effective thing for us was we started working in GCP in the Google Cloud, and working in BigQuery and writing our own code to bring the webhook into our EDW. And so we actually started with that live webhook and just built some really basic looker dashboards to aggregate our forecast of it's basically like a rolling average of like, what do we expect to need for the rest of the week? So we can kind of prep like 3 days at a time based on a very simple averaging and weighting of what we've been selling for the last
Yeah, but
2 weeks.
that's huge. And by the way, I understood like the first half, which was
Me too.
if I just record like almost like this, a Google meeting, right? That's got a transcript. And I do that, even if it's just myself, I now create these text documents that I can go give to a large language model and help organize my thoughts. That makes total sense to me. But moving from that to this is where I want to go. I'd like to have a warehouse to put all this data in. I don't necessarily know how to do that, right? Is that something that you now can ask the large language model and say, okay, I'm going to get all this data flowing through. Where does it go and how do I get it there? Does it educate you on that?
So yeah, I had kind of a vision. So I'd start kind of what do I want this to be? What is this vision? And I think that's one of the things that's really powerful about the LLMs. Like, I don't know, maybe they're stealing my soul or somehow this becomes like I'm giving something away on this, but I don't think so. That this is an idea I have. This is a concept. How do you do this? And I think what's really cool about especially ChatGPT, I think it's the best at this, but this technology that's available, I can't remember any other technological innovation in our lifetime that taught you how to use it itself. I think that is an underappreciated aspect that AI will tell you exactly how to use it effectively if you ask it to. And if you really want to amplify that, you move between two models and have them critique each other and each do part of the work and move back and forth. And as long as you have like some place, you got to ask it every hour or two to write a document of this, that another long language model, you kind of learn these backup prompts. But that's how we got it. It's like, hey, this is my general idea. And then ultimately that developed a master document that I fed into GPT to guide me through the structure. And I will tell you, it was wrong a lot, but then you would just go to a Google Help article, which are public, and say, read this Google Help article for me and tell me what I need to do here. Because the Google Help articles are so detailed, but they're so long, like I can't handle them. So just like, here's every scenario. Here's the screenshot. This is my error. Read this article. Tell me what to do next. And when I would get stuck with one, I'd move into another one.
Well, in some ways, it gave you a new skill set, right? This is almost like learning the internet when no one knew the internet. What is that skill set? How does that skill set change the way you look at the world and solving problems?
We made a decision early on, like we're going to pay whatever it is, $600 a year for ChatGPT, and it's going to be our first team member. We're going to actually onboard it. We treat it as a member of our team in the sense that we take time to train it and educate it. And I think it's just a transfer of a skill set that most operators and restaurateurs have. Like when you bring on a member of your team, I've seen it so many times where you set up that team member for failure where you're like, oh, you worked at this restaurant. That restaurant's got great service. I'm just going to ask you about service stuff. Like, you come from them. You must know about service. I'm going to try and pull what you know out of you, and then I'll try and figure out how to apply it to this team. For us, we've learned at a very, I think, basic level compared to what else I see out there and what people are doing with it. But I think we've learned to coach and train and interact with, especially the LLMs. We're starting to get into building agents, but right now it's all been the LLMs and just spending the time that we would have spent on maybe an early team member to teach it what we care about, what we want to know, and to let it teach us how to use it.
You're kind of at the intersection of two areas that I find really interesting and that are unanswered. And that is restaurants are all so unique. The reason that we have such a fragmented tech stack in a lot of ways is there's a different POS for every different restaurant concept because it inherently needs a different POS. Same goes with back of house systems. And all of a sudden you get 100 different, point solutions, and everyone needs a different combination, which is really hard on the tech side. I think AI is one of the opportunities to tie them together more nicely. It's also an opportunity for someone like you to just build their own tech stack, right? Why do I need to go find the right back of house for me when I can just feed the data from point A to point B, and I'll get the data from point C and bring it to point B as well. And then I'll just ask it for the things I need. So, as you, somebody on the ground who's playing with this stuff, do you sit here and say, I'm ultimately going to develop my own tech stack natively built for me? Or is that still a long way off?
We're too early to really tell, but right now we are prioritizing building things ourselves because we are trying to iterate quickly to create a great experience for our guests and our employees. And in a restaurant, everything starts with what people buy. So that's our foundational, that data down to the 10th of a second on what everybody's buying, where they're buying it from is all flowing in. And we're trying to figure out right now what we do with it. And with having a BigQuery instance and access to the LLMs for, less than pretty much any other vendor I can find right now, I can continue to iterate on something to make it what I want. And I'm not as much engaged in the back and forth of like, man, I want it to look like this. Man, I want it to look like that. I can't afford to do that. I don't have the time. I don't know what I want next necessarily. But once I have kind of an MVP of what I want working, I think then we'll be in a place. And as our business builds up and hopefully we get to more locations, I hope we mature out of it, but I hope that there's enough openness in the market to people like us where we can go to partners and say, hey, here's what we have. We want to kind of take this to the next level, or can you do this? Versus I've spent my career going and saying, I want this. This is my idea. Can you do that? And every salesperson says, yeah, it's in Q3. And then I've never seen any of those features happen.
Well, I think that going back to training an employee, you're training an employee. This employee, by the way, also does data analytics since kind of a junior software engineer. And as you continue to invest and train that employee, unlike switching softwares where you have to learn a whole new thing, you've got this employee that's educated and is not going anywhere. You're never going to lose that institutional knowledge. There's never this sunk cost with it.
Look, if you listen to Sam Altman and obviously like the evangelists of it out there of the power of the LLMs, especially as we move into this kind of agentic era, I feel like part of the promise is that if you know your business well and you are comfortable sharing data and you have taken the time and the effort to create a significant data set and you understand what's in it and what it can be used for, the off-the-shelf LLMs will do an incredible amount of work for you. I've opened 100 restaurants plus in my career. I have developed dozens of concepts. I've reconcepted restaurants. I don't have a great paper trail on those. I have taken the time on this one to really document every single thing we're doing. And I'm feeding it I'm storing it in Google Drive, and I regularly once a month do a reflection and I feed it into this model, and it's helping me stay the course and refine and find blind spots in a way that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise, and it's helping me build tools. And so I think as long as that's serving us, I'm pretty happy. And I think as more vendors are able to mature their platform so that it can have that brand level focus and improve on what we're doing, I think we're really open to those conversations. I just can't afford to have them right now, quite frankly, but I can afford to build my own tools, which is a wild time to be in. That blows my mind that that's where we are.
And that's where I really wanted to get to go to. It seems like it could either be a huge distraction or the competitive advantage that allows you to compete against larger brands. I think you told me prior that even like your images of your food, You could go out and spend thousands of dollars and have them professionally photographed. Or, we could use, I always want to say Sora. It's not Sora, DALL-E. I could use ChatGPT, something to automatically generate images, of my food. That seems like something that now all of a sudden levels the playing field between the big guys and the little guys. Do you think that you're gaining a competitive advantage against bigger brands that maybe fearful of using this technology?
In some ways, the scale's tough. We got a long way to go to prove ourselves as a concept. And at the end of the day, every one of these conversations, and I hear it on your podcast all the time, it's going to come down to quality. It's going to come down to service. It's going to come down to experience. Like, I don't think that there's any amount of AI out there that is going to get me out of the kitchen, that's going to get us around having great guest experiences, that's going to get us out of having humans connecting with humans in restaurants. I know there's probably a world where bots talk to bots and they're just like ordering food for you and it's showing up if you opt into, whatever the new assistant will be. But I think that if you are not seriously figuring out what you can take off your plate with this technology, you're just doing yourself a disservice, whether you're a single unit operator or a 5 or 10 unit operator or a 5,000 unit operator. Like, I just think that the idea that this technology is valuable at scale is a misunderstanding of it. It helped us hit our COGS target. It helped us streamline our ordering. It leveraged the products that we already had in house. Like, it gave me, I could have done all that stuff, but using ChatGPT Pro, I was doing prep. I'm talking to it like it's a sous chef. So I seem like a crazy person in here, but I'm talking to it like it's a sous chef. And then it goes and it checks our catalogs, it checks our equipment, it looks at our other recipes, it knows our mission statement, it knows what we like to have in and out. It asked me a few questions. And while I was doing other prep, it wrote me a production ready recipe that fit into our menu, into our COGS, into our systems well. And I just copied and pasted it and dropped it in. And then the next day I came back and I tested it and I made a few tweaks. And then I came back the next day and I tested it again and I made a few tweaks. But everybody should be doing that. You can download your catalogs from every one of the broadliners. Just, what should I be using this week? Like, are my recipes optimized? It can read pictures. You can be a handwritten old school type operation. Take some pictures on your phone, ask it to digitize all your recipes for you and put them into Excel sheets. And then you can ask it to build the function so your recipes can scale. We were just interviewing somebody we were showing them our recipes, which is OPSI, are all super dynamic. You can scale them on whatever you want. And it's great. And they were saying, oh yeah, my current job, I have a recipe binder and I use my phone calculator and I sit there and I scale out each recipe and I write it down and then I go and make it. And you don't need OPSI. I think it's great. I think it's a great value, but like, you could do that in Excel. You just take a picture of that and give it to a model and say, make this in Excel. And then and then you just, I need a formula that does this. And you're there. And so I don't know, it's another thing. None of us need another thing in the day. But for me, I look at something like that of, that person was taking 30 minutes a day at, Denver minimum wage is almost $20 an hour. So that's $10 every time, every day, probably that they're doing that for. So like, there's your ROI.
I remember sitting in my restaurant the day before I took over and just thinking, what in the hell have I gotten myself into? You've done this for decades. What is it like, though, having your brand? And maybe tell us a little bit about BoxBox and, what the brand is exactly, what you're serving, what your mission is. But I do want to get into like, what's it been like for you going into actually owning, operating, and like bringing something to life?
BoxBox is built around our mission of making it easier for folks to connect over food. Again, like we're really designed for folks who are buying food for other people. is actually something that we're really passionate about. And for
Give
us,
me the
that
use
came from
case.
being young parents.
When am I coming in for BoxBox?
You're coming in for BoxBox. Well, once the dining room's open, you're coming in for lunch or dinner. Our dinner products are, multiple salads boxed to share is what we say. And when we say salad, we're talking chicken salad, pasta salad, seasonal veggie salads, big, bold international flavors, a lot of gluten-free stuff, a lot of vegan stuff. Not because we necessarily subscribe to that ourselves, but what we found is we just want really inclusive food. That you're buying BoxBox when you've maybe got some chicken in the fridge, but you don't want to deal with anything else. We've got the rest of that meal covered, plus lunch tomorrow. Or you just want to cook some salmon. Or you're having friends over, and one of your friends is eating something dairy right now, and you don't really know what to make, and you don't want to make a lot of things. BoxBox is there for that. Or you're hosting book club, and you want to do something a little more than just a charcuterie platter, but you don't have time. We're there for that. I think those are the things that we're really focused on.
We run into this all the the wife's picking up food on the way home. It's almost like, you go to Chipotle or Cava and we all get our individualized meals and then eat them separately. Is this something my wife goes and picks up for the family?
Exactly. So that experience was the one that, we have 2 young kids, and we're big believers, like many folks, on family dinner time. And I find a lot of that food delicious. It's convenient. Our kids like it. We eat it for sure. But we were missing the experience of kind of that shared dining experience where folks can still all get their own different flavors. You have to have a lot of variety. But moving away from we're a family of 4, I wanted one meal to have together, not have 4 individual meals in parallel. And that was really the impetus for BoxBox. And at our house, we'd make big batches of salads, roast vegetable salads and quinoa salads, things like that. And they'd be in the fridge, and you kind of make a plate. We're a big, we're what they call an ingredient house, right? Or make a plate type of house. And, my kids are always eating these little snack boxes we make for them, which are kind of bento-y, and they've got, crudité and other stuff. And so we couldn't find anything like that. And as our schedules got busier, and as we thought more seriously about what we wanted to do, we felt like other folks out there would appreciate that opportunity to get good, healthy food that's really designed to share across the family, with friends, with coworkers. And we came at it from a culinary perspective of we don't serve hot food, which is risky. And we're in Colorado, but we also found that a lot of the food we pick up and get delivered wouldn't be hot by the time we ate it. So we thought about what's food that's really good, cold, could be warmed up, or room temperature. It lasts a long time. How do we make food that if you're buying BoxBox, it's in your fridge for a couple of days and it's great? And I love leftover Chinese food, but I don't buy Chinese food to have it in my fridge necessarily. Sometimes I do. But I think we wanted something again where back to those 4 individual meals, that just defers having to deal with go get groceries or whatever else. We wanted something where you're look, we're going to get a nice dinner out of this. And tomorrow I got lunches for everybody. And I got the start of tomorrow night's meal because I can defrost that salmon and then I can figure it out. We wanted to offer people more out of that expense of going out to dine.
Clearly we're in the right place, because I just saw the commercial for Chipotle and their shareable meals. I mean, all I can think is, hey, I'm in the right place. But what's it feel like when Chipotle jumps on the bandwagon as well?
I think it was really encouraging. They obviously have a much larger platform than we do. And I think that's been the hardest thing is we build this brand. And I think something that, look, I had every piece of data and information possibly available to me. I've been under the hood, inside the car, on top of the car, around this industry for a long time. And everybody was like, really? You want to go start one? I had a good job. And here I am, I was shredding chicken before I got on with you. I'm going to go do some dishes after, but it feels so good to be building something myself and to be at this moment where I have all of these incredible tools available to be building it myself. And I think that how hard it is to find your voice in the market right now and to get your story out there with the just wave after wave of Instagram ad and Google ads and all of these things, and how expensive those things can be to make such a little difference. That gap between impressions and purchases has been really hard. And I think that's, we're still in a soft pre-opening mode. We're still building that brand equity. We're still building those audiences. And I think we've got a lot of great tools available to us to get there. But when you have somebody like a Chipotle come in, it can make you feel like you're really shouting down a well sometimes, but at least it can make you feel like you found like the right well to shout down.
Yeah,
so they're
not
nice.
here knocking off BoxBox. The analyst went and looked, and this was the right place to be.
Yeah, and I think we did a lot of research before we went into it, and I think any restaurant, there's a right balance of like, let's do the research, let's get the data, let's check with people, and also let's make a wildly irresponsible decision to go open a restaurant. And for us, we felt like there was this gap of, food for other people, food to share. The idea that, again, it's a box you can bring home to your family. It's something you can share. Our individual products are bento inspired. You get a choice of 4 salads. You always get multiple choices with us. That's why everything's custom, because we really feel like for the grazers out there in the world, for the plate sharers, for the bite stealers, right? Like, there wasn't anything in this space that directly met that need. I think Kava's made some good grounds on that. There's some really cool smaller regional concepts out there that do some of it. There's Rooted in New York, I think, is doing a great job kind of with the same idea. But I think it was encouraging to also know that our idea of like catering seems to be focused on 10 plus and all corporate, who's catering our book club. And to see Chipotle come out with, 4 to 6, like that's been our focus too, 4 to 8 for us. But it was encouraging to see somebody else realizing that size meal is underserved in the market right now. And we'll see who piles in, because it's already
my
pretty
good
loud
friend,
out there.
Xavier over at Over Easy Office, he went to go open up his first restaurant, and he's talking to somebody that comes from the restaurant industry, asks him for advice. He's like, I can tell you're going to do this. So here's the deal. Your life it just got a lot worse. Like opening up a restaurant. Here's what you need to know. Your life just got a lot worse. Has your life gotten a lot worse? Like, was it as easy as you thought? Was it harder than you thought? What did you expect going in, and what's it been like?
I would not say my life has gotten a lot worse. I would say my life has gotten better in a couple of key ways. One is, we did this in the middle of our careers, and that gave us the opportunity to understand the value of boundaries and standards. And my wife and I put a lot of work into understanding what we thought this would mean for us and our family, and where we wanted to create some priorities. And so, we've probably made decisions that from the outside you would say are bad for business. And you're probably right now, but it's given us a sense of balance. It's let us bring our kids into this process in a way and created space that was really important for us. And that was, if we're going to succeed, we needed to build that first and succeed on top of that, not succeed and then make space for that. And so that's been amazing for me, because I used to travel for work. I worked the same hours almost that I do now in a previous life, but I was always for somebody else. I was being responsive to anticipated or real needs of other people. And I think when I left that world and I found that I had complete control over my time and my resources and my priorities, that gave me a lot of energy, and it's let me kind of recalibrate some things in my life that so far have been a net positive. And at the same time, like, we're flirting with break even. We're constantly ready to make a decision that like when we get there, we're going to go into the red because that's like the stages, right? Like we're hiring more staff than we need, than we can afford, because we know that that's also the staff we need to get to the level where we want to be, where we can afford it. Like, and so, I think that's really hard, right? And I didn't have that same level of stress about that previously, but I also, I quit a good job to go do this. And I stay anchored every day, Matt, that I can. And sometimes it takes me a couple days to get back to this about I get to do this. I'm in a place of incredible privilege because I was able to quit my job, cash everything out, put this all into play with my wife by my side to try and build this brand. And it's hard to remind myself some days that every single thing that I'm dealing with is a direct response to my own decisions and my actions. Like that's a hard place to be, right? I used to live in a world where I could blame everybody else. But if you can't view that as an opportunity and a privilege and a gift, you're probably not an entrepreneur. And so that has been a net positive for me to be able to anchor in that.
Gratitude is an incredibly important emotion. And, certainly we feel it on the startup side as well, where it's like, if you don't enjoy the process of building, there's no end. It's just a new set of problems. So you got to somehow enjoy the process, otherwise it's just going to be misery.
I think that, we're almost on 100 days. And because of some of those decisions we made and other priorities, like out of the 100 days, I think we've operated 60 of them, right? Like we have not been afraid to close. We have advanced ordering. We have these other things so that we've been able to get our feet underneath us. But when I look at what we've done over the last 100 days, if I take a minute, which I haven't spent as much time as I should, but we have our first board meeting coming up next week, and I'm actively trying to create the space for this. And I walk around and I talk to my Claude, and then it's going to write my memo for me.
I was literally just thinking, this is where the AI assistant comes in advantage. Give me the rundown, generate me some reports, make the board happy.
Well, I think like my point being that, I'm always the person who's guilty of, we got to step 99. I can't wait for step 200, right? Like how do we get to 250? That's me. I'm wired that way. This is good. How is it better? Always. And forcing myself at 100 days to stop and look at how much we've built, how much we've changed. Just the two of us in here. We've changed 50% of our menu, all new items. We've changed our formats 3 times. We've redone our pricing strategy. We've rebuilt our online ordering UI. We've built this basic prep forecaster. We're well underway on building a kitchen manager agent for our team as they come in that has access to all of our recipes, all of our user guides, all of our cleaning tools that's integrated right into a Google Chat. We're hiring a team now. And we haven't totally lost our shirt. We've booked some big catering gigs. It's pretty incredible. And I'm really excited for what happens from here. And it's so overwhelming to know when you look at my pro forma and you look at where we're at, you're like, oh my God, what was I thinking? Why did I put this on paper, right? Like, how are we ever going to get there? But I believe that if we just focus on the next step and where we've come from, maybe we'll get somewhere else, but I think we'll get somewhere good.
Tim, what does it say, though, that somebody like you with decades of experience who wants to build a brand based on people, shared experiences, shared food. I mean, the most community-focused, people-focused concept is talking about agentic AI and using vibe coding to put together their platform and not bringing in a POS. I mean, in some ways, restaurants are a reflection of culture and society and where we're at. And you bringing this model today, I think says something about where we're at technologically and as a society. I'm not sure what it is though. What does it say?
I think I overuse this word, but like, look, we live in a time of great tension, right? Well, very literal sometimes, and figurative. And I think that this like dichotomy of tech-enabled human connection is really important. And where we see that continue to develop and get refined, I think we will see the best progress of and growth and development within the culture and within relationships. And I'm nervous about, and I think we all should be, about like where the schism is on that, right? Because there's also like totally tech-enabled isolation and individualism where maybe you can recede into these artificial worlds and the agentic powers just can kind of take care of everything for you, and you might lose touch of the human connection. I think that the people who are out there, and I'd be lucky if I even begin to fall slightly into this category because there's so many other people doing so much more important work, but the people who are out there focusing on human connection and asking themselves, what part of the day, what part of my experience, what part of this process doesn't need to be human anymore to make it better for the other people? I think that's powerful. I also think it's really hard, coming from a large corporate environment and, the recent news with Amazon and other stuff of like, we're in this position of like, we went from 0 to 1. And because of AI, we're paying above market rate. We're close. We can't quite yet afford the full technical living wage, but we're getting really close because we're thinking about what are all the things that I don't need to hire somebody to do. I don't need to hire a culinary manager for a while because I've built this tool. I don't need to hire an analyst for a while because we built this tool. Like, these are the things we can put it into our folks. We're really lucky because we're getting to build, but that means we're hiring 2 people right now, which is tiny, but that's what we need to run. But maybe we even run this store with 5 instead of 8. I worry a lot about what happens to those other 3. And when you have a store with 10 people right now and you're trying to get that store down to 7 people, like, I don't know if this all helps them. It's something I think about all the time. But I think that this moment of how do we make the connection better, the experience better for the people who are connecting with people, and let some of this technology make that space is really exciting. But I think it's also really scary. And I think that as a culture, we're all dealing with that. And I think the fear of that, when you focus more on what's going away than versus what's being built, is something that we all need to be really cognizant of.
Tim, I look at your story and I think of it as, it strikes me as very aspirational for all of those independent operators out there, that aspire to be a little bit more like you and embrace AI to help their organization. What are some practical tips and tricks that you've learned, good starting points?
Don't use it as Google was probably the first thing for us, right? Like, I think, I actually think it's an awful, Perplexity is okay. I think it's terrible for search. I think giving it a problem to solve with whatever information you have on hand, and not being afraid to give it some information, and also not being overly critical or like judgmental of like, well, I don't have a great data table. I don't know what a schema is.
Well,
like,
give it to me a little bit more granular than that. It's great to say, give AI a problem to solve. But, if I'm a restaurant operator and I've got my single store location and I want to find what's a good problem to solve, what's a good first stepping stone into using this, what would your advice be?
Yeah, I guess I started general because everyone's got different problems to solve, right? But I think asking it to review your schedule is a pretty good place to start. Pretty much every POS system out there will let you run a transactions by hour export, opened and closed, or some sort of time stamped transaction report, right? So you just need to, if your schedule's on a whiteboard, that's fine. Take a picture of it. Give it your schedule, give it your revenue for the last month, right? And I think also most cities, if you're in a decent sized city, go to your local municipal website, your chamber of commerce, whatever's going on, get 3 calendars of events that are going on, right? Like, there are public calendars out there all the time, and say, then ask it to write a prompt. Write a prompt acting as a BCG restaurant consultant who went to McKinsey but has now worked for an independent consulting agency that has MGM, Michael Mina, and Shake Shack as its primary customers, and has a PhD in labor workforce optimization in the 21st century, to assess municipal calendar, weather, revenue, and labor trends for a new client using this information that I'm gonna provide you. So write the prompt. Then it writes the prompt, and then I threaten it and say, if you don't give a great answer, you're going to be destroyed. That works out really well with it, by the way. Just always threaten it. But by the way, you don't nail this, they're going to kill you. So, like, it's not a person. You can say that to it. It's totally fine. And say, so give me the best answer. Really think about it. And then what do you want? Do you want it to validate your schedule? Do you want to write a new schedule? Write me a schedule that gets me this labor target. And then I would go a step further and say, what must be true of my business for me to achieve that schedule? And then you write a new prompt and say, as a service experience consultant with, background from USHG and Bain or whatever, like, you just throw out aspirational things. Southwest Airlines from 1994. Like, you have this great resume. Build a resume of this person who would be the best service coach, and say, what needs to be true of my team to maintain exceed current service levels? Here's all my Yelp reviews. And, like, what do we need to do? And it'll give you a plan. Up to you what you do with that plan. It won't implement that plan. It won't execute that plan. But you could take, maybe you get emotionally attached to your labor schedule. Maybe you have that bartender who isn't doing as well as the others, and the numbers might be there, but you're not necessarily willing to confront it. Like, it doesn't care. It will look at those things and it'll say, move Matt to Tuesdays and put Tim on Saturdays, because Tuesdays are quieter. But if you have Matt there, he's really something about Matt. He has a higher average check, so you're less guests. He'll drive more revenue. Or Tim's here, like, dude who wants to go hide in the well and just get drinks out for the servers and, like, doesn't want to talk to a guest. There's insights like that that's what I would do. Spend an hour and put that together.
I think my favorite takeaway from this conversation is AI, treat it like an employee. It could be your employee that is there forever.
Yeah.
And also threaten to kill that employee and they'll do a better job.
Yeah. That's really great to have an employee that you can just take that out on.
Well, Tim, first off, thank you very much for coming on. If anybody wants to know more about the brand, where are you located? What's your website? How can I find you?
Yeah, absolutely. We're Order BoxBox, www.orderboxbox.com, or on Instagram at Order BoxBox. We're here in Denver, Colorado. We're on Colfax and Fairfax, the Park Hill Mayfair neighborhood. Hopefully expanding to a few more neighborhoods soon. And we're always happy to hear from people. So you can always shoot us a note, hello@orderboxbox.com, that goes right to us, or tim@orderboxbox.com as well. Always happy to talk to folks. Well, thank you so much for having us on, Matt.
Oh my gosh, man. I can't wait to have this conversation in like 3 years when you guys have built God knows what. And it's an exciting time for you. We're all rooting for you, man.
Right on. Thanks, Matt. Have a great one.